Hello, my name's Andrew, and today we're doing a first impression review of the Vivo Barefoot GOBI Chelsea boot. Let's take a look at it. Up front, you've got a wide toe box, which is pretty typical of Vivo. It doesn't have laces, so there's not as much stretch as you might get in the laced version of this boot, but it is leather, so it will stretch out over time. It's kind of a sheen leather, so it has really good waterproofing. I took them out for a walk this morning, and it was raining last night. It was really mucky and muddy, and just like my GOBI boots, water just kind of like sheds straight off this. And I think Vivo Barefoot also treats their boots before you even get them with probably lanolin or a waterproofing spray, which they also sell on their website. So they're just like rock solid. This is not a waterproof boot, or at least they don't say it is, but for me, it's probably about 90% water resistant. If you take it through, some stream wading or something like that, or you really just sit in deep puddles for a long time, it might soak through eventually, but I went on a 45-minute walk this morning and I was just kind of like cruising through wet grass, which usually is a killer because it just kind of like wraps around the whole boot, but my feet were completely dry. And they're already like bone dry from this morning. So overall, I really like Vivo Barefoot's casual boots for water resistance, but they've also got multiple layers up front that really helps. So you've got the rubber sole wrapping it up and around, and then you've got the secondary layer, and then you've got the third layer, and then you've got the top. So this really helps seal the boots from water getting in. They do have a stitched sole, so this is one reason why if you were going into like some deep puddles or stream crossings and stuff like that and really soaking them, this is one place where water could get in. But overall, these are the closest thing to a rain boot that I've ever tested, and I've been wanting to have a barefoot rain boot for basically ever since I've been trying barefoot boots, because like my grandfather, I used to have some of them as a kid, but my grandfather would have like a pair of galoshes that look kind of like this, and it always seemed really nice. So that's another thing that these boots are kind of like, because you can just slip into the Chelsea top here. There's some stretch on the side. They've got a lot of good flexibility to them, so it's really easy to slide your foot in. Little pull tab there if you need it. I found for me, I have skinny ankles, so it felt like maybe just a little too much room, but for most people, I think it would be fine, especially if you're wearing like a second pair of socks in the winter. This is a great boot for all season because it doesn't have any insulation. There's no extra wool or anything in there. It does have a leather footbed. It's really hard to see because it's dark in there. But anyways, in terms of all season, you can wear these in the summer as long as it's not probably up to 80 degrees. It was about 75 when I was wearing these out in the afternoon today, and they were fine. If you go above that, they might get a little sweaty just because they do have some really nice water resistance. But yeah, you could stack a wool felt insole in there. Vivo Barefoot gives you a cork insole. I don't particularly care for the cork insoles because I just find them to be a little bit hard. They just add a little bit too much rigidity to the boot for me and limit ground feel. So I usually use a wool felt insole, or Vivo Barefoot's thermal insole can be nice. It has like a space blanket layer in there, which can help with waterproofing and insulation, stuff like that. But yeah, let's take a look at the sole. So it's 3.7 millimeters, very, very thin. And it's like really weird because Vivo Barefoot is making their soles like even thinner than they were before. They used to be 4 millimeters. Now the casual is 3.7 millimeters, but you can hear it. Like this is a durable sole. I don't understand how they're accomplishing that. I mean, I think part of it is that they've got a little bit of leather in there, which just adds a little bit of stability, but a ton of flex. You can bend them in any direction. You can bend them diagonally, twist them into a pretzel. But in terms of the tread, the other thing that I like about Vivo Barefoot is that they have a lot of detail to their tread. So you can see that they've got the hexagonal pattern, and this works really well because it creates more open space here, but then they've also sliced it. So you get kind of like flexibility in any direction with the hexagon, and then even more flexibility vertically because they've sliced the hexagons in half. So the rubber is also quite grippy as well. I was taking them on a wet boardwalk and they grip pretty well. I mean, nothing's gonna be perfect on ice or a slippery, slimy boardwalk, but yeah, there's a lot of surface area there which works. And because the lugs aren't deep, it's pretty easy to clean. Like you can still see I've got a little mud left on there, but overall you can just kind of like take a brush to them and yeah, they're pretty easy to maintain. And then in terms of durability, You can just look at, I have basically the same sole on my Gobi Winners. These are a year old and they look great. So it's kind of surprising that a sole that's this thin could hold up this well. But my original Vivo Barefoot Primus Lights are like 7 years old at this point, and I'm not using them that much anymore, but I have like 4,000 miles on them. They're still going. So yeah, I think Vivo Barefoot's getting better and better with their rubber, at least in my experience. And it feels really smooth to walk on. Like, this is a great city boot because it rolls, you know, and it flexes like your foot should, but then you've got the grip, you've got the durability. So yeah, overall, feels really great. One other detail is that they have a little notch here, which I think is important. It's on the outside as well, because especially with a leather boot like this, where it's got, you know, multiple layers too, if you don't have that notch, you can get crimping, and then the boot can tear out here. It does have a stitch sole, so it's a little less likely to do that, but it does just prevent also kind of like weird bending on the top that's uncomfortable as well. So just kind of like a durability and comfort thing there. If you want something that's a little bit more secure, this is the Gobi Winterized. The new version is called the Warm Line, but it's essentially the same thing. And this is kind of like a nice option. It's a little bit taller, so it's a good snow boot for slush and stuff like that. But it provides you a little more security with the lace design versus the slip-on of the Gobi Chelsea. So I find it's better for going on longer walks, and obviously it takes just a little bit longer to put on, but they do have the 2 quick release grommets at the top, and basically what I do is I just get it tightened to where I want on the front, and then you can whip this on and off pretty fast. It does open up really well. You can see there's a ton of space. There's a ton of space in there, and it has a synthetic lining, so it's a great option for winter and early on in the spring, and then later on in the fall when it's starting to get cold. It's a synthetic lining. It looks like wool, but actually it's very puffy, and so I find the breathability actually works really well. It's got the same toe box wide design, but when you open up the laces, this boot could get almost up to extra wide, so there's a ton of room in there. But even for someone like me with medium width feet, it's, you know, it feels snug. So this is my favorite winter casual boot. I just love it because you've got the durability on the sole, but the flexibility also, and then really good water resistance, just like the Gobi Chelsea. If you want something even lighter, this is the Mookie Shoes Chelsea. This is the below tip version, but these things are feather light. I mean, the Vivo Barefoot Gobi boot and the Chelsea boot are pretty light. They're kind of like medium weight for a casual shoe, but these are like a feather. And they've got more of a medium toe box. I would say that the Gobi Chelseas are wider, but like I said, with the Gobi Chelsea, they have a leather upper, so they do conform to the shape of your feet over time. They've got a stitch sole, which is always excellent for breathability. Also, some really good stretch on top, very easy to slip into. And they've got wool insulation, so a little bit warmer out of the box than the Gobi Chelsea, although it does make them a little bit less versatile for hot weather. It's mostly a fall, spring, winter type boot. But the sole is extremely lightweight. It is 3.5 millimeters, so even thinner than Vivo Barefoot. And they don't have a thicker leather mid layer in there. Just very, very thin wool layer. So these are the best ground feel of any barefoot shoe or boot or brand, I guess, that I've tried. The flexibility is just nuts on these. It's like almost completely like being barefoot. But the grip is really good. You know, it's got, I would say maybe even a little bit more tacky than Vivo Barefoot, but they're pretty similar. And then it's a great urban casual type tread because it rolls smoothly. But there's lots of surface area to grip on slippery conditions. But I don't think they have quite as much durability. You can hear that it just sounds like a lighter sole. So I would save these for pavement and concrete versus the Vivo Barefoot Gobi Chelsea, which you can take on some light trails and not be too worried about it breaking down. And then one last thing to mention, because they're so light and because you can slip them on, they're a great slipper for indoor use as well as outdoor, so a really versatile option for cold weather. If you want something like the Mookie Shoes Chelsea, but with a little bit more durability, this is the Isla Uma Chelsea, and you can hear just a little thicker sole. It's 4 millimeters, so very light, still lots of good ground feel, and flexibility in pretty much every direction. But it does feel more rugged. There's a little more structure up top. This is probably the most rugged out of the options that we've looked at. Still a Chelsea boot, so you can slip it on. It is a little bit tighter, I think, than the other ones, which has pros and cons. Obviously, it's a little bit more tough to get your foot in, but also it kind of holds your ankle better. So I feel like these provide more security than the other two, but it does have a stitched sole. And I really love the chocolate brown color. I think it's one of my favorite barefoot shoe designs, honestly. And then inside, kind of like the Mookie shoes Belota, it's got wool insulation. It's a little bit more scratchy versus the Belota, which is slightly softer, but it doesn't really matter if you have a pair of socks on, you don't really feel it. So another good option for wet, nasty conditions, a little more water resistant than Mookie shoes, but I would say Vivo Barefoot is probably the best. Finally, we've got the Magical Shoes Alaskan, and this boot is really cool because it has a zipper on the side that makes it very easy to slip on and off. They've also got a Chelsea version with the same thing. So it's got the zipper on the side, but then it's got a Chelsea boot kind of elastic on the inside, which is pretty cool because then you get a choice of how you want to put it on. I've never seen any brand do this before. But anyways, it's got some really excellent flexibility. It's a 6.5 millimeter sole. And so it's kind of like you could take this on trails because it is a little bit thicker, but they've cut it really well. So there's a ton of flexibility and some good ground feel as well. In terms of the toe box, it's wide, but then it does get just a little bit more slim towards the tip. So if you have wider feet, you might want to go up a half a size, but like the others, it is leather, so it does have some really nice stretch. Will conform to your feet over time. One thing about this boot is that because the tread is lower cut, it does improve flexibility, but it also can let water in here. So you may want to treat it, and if you need a boot to go through some really wet, slushy conditions, this may not be the one. It's a little bit better for mostly dry conditions, but this is actually the warmest out of the ones we've looked at, Chelsea boots. It's got super thick wool insulation. It's very puffy, so this is an extremely warm boot for a dry, cold climate. All right, so that's my first impression review of the Vivo Barefoot Gobi Chelsea boot and friends, but if you'd like to support the channel, you can shop the referral links down below, browse and filter more products with the shoe finder tool at my website, barefootwear.org, or watch my zero drop transition video to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about the Vivo Barefoot Gobi Chelsea boot or about barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Peace.